came back and said, you should not just be here for that fraud, you should be here for the theft of £300,000 from company. I got sent to a higher prison on sentencing. There's somebody that doesn't walk that path of life, that doesn't mix with criminals. I was in the same prison as Rose West. I remember my husband and my eldest daughter having to go pick him up, and they said they literally walked out of the school doors, burst into tears. I was like, what's going? So, if one person listens to this, then it gives them the courage to do that and not ruin their life. And I've been to prison, I've lost everything. Why the hell am I still gambling? Why has this still got this hold over me? And that's when I realised it.
Hello everybody, my name's Daniel. Welcome to Addicted Recovery. We've got a very special episode today, a first for the channel, a podcast interview with a fellow former gambling addict now in recovery called Pauline. Pauline, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love for the people to get to know you a bit. So before we get into everything, just tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, my name's Pauline. I'm 46 years old and I'm a compulsive gambler.
Great to have you on. Right, we'll get into the nitty gritty. So when did your gambling start?
My first experience of gambling is my dad was in the bookies every day. It was a horse racing fan. But it never appealed to me, did gambling. But it's only after being in recovery and thinking back, I remember many family holidays and whatever, and we were dragged every 2 hours to stand outside William Hill while he just ran in to check the results. So that's probably my earliest memory of gambling. Other than gambling earlier than that, my birthday falls in April, which is Grand National Weekend. And I think from the age of 17 to probably about 22, that was what we did for my birthday every year. But again, wasn't a problem. There was no gambling issues around. It was solely just for the fun. It wasn't until 2018 that gambling became a problem for me. What used to happen was on a weekend, a Friday or a Saturday night, my husband would, like he'd always done since we first got married, have a bet on the football. And he was a massive boxing fan, and if there was boxing on, the boxing. We shared all our finances, so everything was out of a joint account. And if he was sat on a Friday or a Saturday night watching the boxing or the football or any sport, coming to think of it, and he'd had 50 quid that day, it wasn't a case of, oh, he's had it so I've got to, but I was sat bored while he was watching, these things. So one evening I was like, I think he'd asked me to place a bet for him actually on the boxing. And as I was on, I was like, oh, I'll put 30 quid in. And I was like, oh, what shall I do? Because it was all new to me. I was like, oh, I'll go on the roulette. Well, I think that first night, I won £2,000 from £30. But even going back to that day, I think I put 500 of it straight back on. But yeah. I still managed to bank, 1,500. And I remember that adrenaline rush. That wow, from 30 quid, we're booking a holiday. We're going on holiday next month.
It's easy money, isn't it?
Yeah. And obviously didn't think it was an issue. But then I think maybe 2 weeks after, the same again. And I won £3,000 again. And I was like, oh my God, from £60, I've won nearly £5,000 in 2 weeks. But even then when I won that £3,000, I put £1,000 straight back on. And I've spoken to my friends about this who have totally different conceptions about money, and they're like, why on earth would you do that? But even
guessing they've never had
an addiction,
a problem with gambling.
Yeah. Even then, I was still chasing. From that instant, I was thinking it's that easy. So I probably gambled £1,000 of that back. banked 2. And I can honestly say within 18 months, how quickly it escalated is absolutely mind-blowing to me now. I was just hook, line and sinker from then. It started being a weekend thing. And then these gambling sites are programmed to give you big wins in the beginning to keep you coming back. And then once the big wins don't come, you start chasing your losses.
Yep.
It wasn't even the feeling of the dopamine rush and the adrenaline of winning. There was also the escapism and how quickly the time went while I was playing that I think enticed me. You know, on a Friday, Saturday night, while the other half's watching football and the kids are in bed. It was a fun thing to do, you know, it passed the evening, you know. I wasn't ironing or cleaning or, you know, worrying about
And
what the kids were
the
doing.
convenience.
Yeah,
You don't even have to leave the house, do you?
yeah. And very quickly, I would be gambling. As I say, we had joint finances, all had. And I was very lucky because my husband trusted me 100%. He never even checked the bank account. As long as he went to the ATM or went to use his card and there was money there, I don't think he even knew what was coming in and what was going out. I was responsible for everything, which not a good thing. It was my downfall. They got to the stage where I would gamble everything that was in the account. Then I'd do the overdraft. Then I'd do all those credit cards, trying to chase back, worrying, crap, if he goes to draw some money out, there's none there. I'm going to have to now use the credit cards to try and win some back to put in.
Let me take you back to those early ones, those first 2 big wins. It's such a common story from most people who have a gambling addiction. Those wins, those big wins very early on, and it just tricks you into thinking that's what it's going to be like every time.
Yeah,
You're gonna put £30 in and take this much out, and take and what almost 1,000% your money, no more than 5,000% your money. It's incredible how many people's stories start like that, where they get those early wins. My story was like that from a young age. 2 big wins that I can always go back to, and yeah, just that it's that feeling of euphoria, isn't it? That
easy money.
it's so easy to exactly. It's so easy. I don't even have to leave the house. This I can do this for a job. Why would I stop? But then, as you say, those big wins don't always come, and then once you start losing that little bit, you start digging that hole. It's hard to get out of that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I didn't need that money. We were very financially comfortable, so it wasn't like that $2,000 got me out of a hole, you know. Which I still find very difficult to understand why that was still such a big draw for me. You know, I know a lot of people do it for financial reasons. But I think it was more to do with the emotional feelings that you got from the win rather than the actual finances of it. But everybody's different. Some people got the buzz from because they needed that money. But for me, it wasn't to do with the amount of money. Oh, obviously never to do with the amount of money because no money was ever enough.
No, I 100% agree there. There's no amount that ever helps you stop. Is that you say I'll stop when I get to this amount, and you get to that amount, you just what's this next amount feel like? It's
Yeah.
funny that you said that the money doesn't matter. It's the thrill of the bet. It's the thrill of the anticipation of waiting for the outcome until, like I just said, and you said as well, you start sort of digging that hole, and you start needing to cover those losses, and that's when you need the money, and you start getting desperate, isn't it? And you'll start doing desperate bets to sort of
Yeah.
put that
Well,
money back so you don't get found out.
it got to the point that I think I'd used the overdraft. I'd run up the 2 or 3 credit cards that we had, and then the credit card bills were coming through the post. And I remember having to wake up early and trying to beat my husband to the post in the morning so that I could get to open them before he did. And I think after a couple of months, I think it became obvious. I think he spotted it a little bit, but never mentioned it. And then once I was struggling to then keep up with overdraft and credit card payments, because we were financially comfortable, I managed to get decent sized loans. And I
Again, you're the
remember,
only one that knows what's going on.
yeah, still not told anybody, but just thinking, right, I just need one win. I'll just get this one loan. Can't remember what my first loan was, maybe 5-6 grand. I'll definitely get a win out of that. Can't quite remember. Probably did have a few little wins out of it, but that first loan went. And what I realised was the bigger my bets were, the more chance there was of me winning the amount of money that I needed. So when I first started gambling, I might have been doing 50p a spin. At this point, probably 3-4 months down the line, I was doing £100 a spin.
Was it all online slots what you were doing?
Yeah, all online slots.
Nothing else interested you?
No, nothing. My husband was a massive boxing fan. We went to Vegas 3 times to watch boxing fights, and in the casinos, and never had an issue with it. Obviously, we went and we sat and we played at the tables, and I could walk away happily. So I never see myself, even when the online gambling started to get out of control, I didn't see myself as a gambling addict, because in my mind I was like, I don't go to the bookies every day like my dad did. If I can go to the races, if I can go to Vegas and not be enticed. So I wasn't putting myself in that category. That sounds mad because I was I was gambling online hugely. But the online it's really dangerous. They say when the fun stops, stop. I don't know who goes on and loses, thinks, right, I'll just bet £100 and then loses it and then goes, oh, that was fun. I might try that again in a couple of weeks. Do you know? I can't imagine anybody doing that. If anybody comes back, they're doing it because they want to win the £100 back. So
Yeah, chasing your
I
luck.
don't believe that anybody does it out of enjoyment when they lose.
But all the messages like that, don't they? When the fun stops, gamble responsibly. Some people can do that, but the majority of us
Um,
can't, can we? And it's
yeah,
just a recipe for disaster.
yeah. But going back to when the personal loan started, I think within the space of probably about 2-3 months, I've still got about 40 grand in personal loans to try and recover this. And I was wise enough to realise that I think on the last couple of loans, I thought I need to apply for 2 or 3 at the same time here while my credit score's all right. Because once they know that I've got 3 or 4 loans, they won't give me it. But if I apply for 2 or 3 now, and they're looking at my credit history, I've only got 1 or 2 loans. And I think in one night I applied for 2 or 3 and got them all approved. Blew all of that very quickly. And then that's when it got dangerous. Then we had one of these mortgages that's classed as I think they call them flexi mortgages, where you can either overpay or underpay, draw out, pay in. And I started taking out the mortgage fund. So I was drawing money out of what we were paying. So I was basically paying the mortgage at the beginning of the month, then drawing it out, and then some. And that's when I realised I had a problem. And I started panicking that I was going to get found out, and I was going to be in trouble. Now this sounds silly because
Yeah,
being in trouble would have been the best option. If I'd have known what I know now, to be able to sit down and have that difficult conversation isn't that difficult to where it can lead. But when you're in the heat of it, I was just like, I can't tell anybody. And me and my husband, God, at this point, we've been together, how old were the kids? Probably about 17 years. I'd say 18. happy marriage. We never argued, never fell out, 3 kids. It would have been understanding if I'd have told him at that point, I think, but I just didn't want to deal with the disappointment or admitting that I'd done something behind his back and lied to him. And he is a person that I know doesn't understand addiction. He wouldn't have got it. He would have seen it as, that's not me making excuses, but yeah, I think every gambler addict feels like they can't tell people at the beginning.
No, addiction thrives in secrecy, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then I made the worst decision of my life. He had his own company, which I was also a director of, and I was in charge of the finances. And one night when I'd lost a load of money, I thought, right, I'll just take £2,000 out of the business account because I'll win it back, and then I'll put it back again next week and nobody will know. Obviously, I lost it. And then I had to try and cover my tracks, which I did by falsifying and made just an invoice up for something for £2,000, some materials, and popped it through the book so nobody knew. And that escalated very quickly. That I was doing it pretty often at that point. It got to the stage where I must have... Now, this is bizarre because in my head, when I was adding it up, I thought I'd probably done about 80, 90 grand at this point out of the company account. And I was laid in bed every night, feeling sick, Googling, right, what's the prison sentence when HMRC found out that I've done this, that and the other. Knowing that it would get found out eventually. And I've never felt so low because I knew that I would get found out at some point and still couldn't tell anybody. And the solution that I came up with at that point was, right, you can't live in fear, because I thought that when that came out, I would have taken my life because I couldn't live with the shame of what I'd done. So I lived every day for about 2 months thinking, right, you've just got to get on and crack on because today could be your last day before you get found out. So just make the most of the time with the kids and just try and enjoy today because it could be your last day. And to think how quickly that went from 12, 13 months before to never placing a bet and being financially comfortable and no problems, to that. And even some nights laid there Googling, what's the least painful way to commit suicide? Trying to come up with a plan. Sorry, give me a minute. And even then, I still didn't have the courage to tell anybody. Probably a lifesaver that one day I had used a company credit card to place some bets. And they rang, obviously, my husband, the fraud team, to check because it come from a gambling site. And that's how it all came out. And just to mention, prior to that as well, I was spending the majority of the money with one site, Coral. Just prior to this, I'd actually won 60 grand. And I think I only needed another 18 to get me out of, I think there was 78,000 that I needed to put back into the company to cover my tracks. And I'd won 68. And I had a screenshot of it on my phone when I'd won it. And within 4 days, I'd gambled it all back. Every single last penny. I think I'd up to £1 a spin, £2 a spin. thinking, I just need one of them 2 grand spins to come in, and then I've got the 70, the extra 12 that I need, and I'm out of it. And I did the whole lot in. And that's when I knew I had a serious problem.
Do you
Um,
think if one of those spins had it came in 10, 12 grand and you got above the 78, do you think you would have stopped?
I think I would have put it back into the company, and then I think the cycle would have started again. Because I would have thought, right, I've saved it, I've got everything paid off, but I would have gone straight back because I would still have then gone back to using our weekly income to have a little bit again. And yeah, it wouldn't have worked. Um, Going back to Coral, I won that 64 grand and put it all back on. And not once did I get a phone call off anybody or an email or a message. Prior to that win, I'd allocated a VIP manager, I think, after about 3 months. They first started with, I have to close my account once because when I was feeling strong, and they gave me an incentive of £400 cash, not in bonuses or free spins, just £400 deposited, no wagering requirements if I was willing to stay. It's a loyalty bonus and an activity bonus. No source of income checks were ever asked of me. I must have deposited some nights when my debit card had run out, then tried numerous credit cards, and then tried the business account. All this they must have been able to see. And not once did anybody approach me and say, right, you've had 5 cards declined now, Pauline. Do you think maybe there's an issue? They took me to, now at the time, I thought this was brilliant. My VIP manager rang me and said that I was one of the top 10 slot players of that month, and they were taking people to Texas to the Grand Prix, the top 10. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Not thinking that they've probably had 200 grand out of it in the last, because I've paid for this trip, God knows how many times over. I had to tell my husband that I'd won it because it was for both of us. And I went and I told him that it was, can't even remember. I said something like it was like a draw. If you placed a bet that evening and yours got called out, then you won. And we went on that trip, and I hated every second of it because I was so scared that the VIP manager or one of the other people on the trip were going to say, no, we're here because we're gambling numerous amounts of money. Yeah, and they took us to football and everything. But I just find it really bizarre that not once did... Oh, I got the odd pop-up when you're in the midst of playing, which is a generic one, saying, your play time is this amount, or are you happy? Do you need any help? But it's nothing personal, nobody reaching out. It's like an automated pop-up. And when you're in the middle of spinning and you're losing, you're like, XXX, get off my screen because you're interrupting my play. A lot's changed now. There has been some changes. You can't gamble with your credit cards now. They've got to ask a source of income. But none of that was, that's what I'm looking for. None of that was there when I was gambling at the time. And I have gone back to them.
Is that specifically to you, or is that across the whole
Yeah,
industry now,
that's
or is
part of
that
the
just
gambling.
Coral?
Yeah, no, part of the gambling commission's policies now. You can't gamble with credit cards online. They can't accept credit cards. They've got to ask for source of income checks after a certain amount of deposits. But it wasn't until about a year into my recovery that I think I approached Coral and asked them, to review. And a lot of people do that because they want to get the losses back or whatever, do you know. And it wasn't that. I wanted someone to take some sort of accountability for letting me down. And I put a complaint in and blah, blah, blah. And I got one back saying that they were very sorry. They realised that I was probably let down, but the rules and policies that are in place now weren't at that time. So they had no legal obligation. And the statutory of limitation, because it was over 7 years, had run out as well. So basically telling me to take my complaints, it was going nowhere.
Right.
Yeah, so it was, I just wanted somebody to take accountability, do you know, and raise awareness of that. Like I say, I wasn't wanting the money back. The money's gone. And I personally, do you know, gambled that money. It's not their responsibility to give it back that I was foolish, but I wanted them to take some sort of responsibility for not even stop, but encouraging. Do you know, if you have to close your account, throwing money at me.
Yeah, I understand. You're not trying to get your money back, but you're trying to prevent them from doing this, to making
Yeah,
it so easy for somebody else to go and do this. Right. Just want to take you back there. You mentioned your trip, the Formula One, where you went with your husband. So your husband is aware that you are gambling, but obviously not aware of the extent to how much you're in at this point.
yeah. I think he still thought I was maybe just doing 20, 30 quid on a weekend.
Yeah. And you said earlier as well, it would have been a blessing if you had got caught. You're worried of getting in trouble, but you think it would have been a blessing if you had have got caught there and then,
Oh,
just
yeah.
because it would have stopped the further financial damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I digress. Sorry, because it popped into my head about how much Coral had actually played a part in it. But I think I got up to the point where I'd taken a lot of money out of the company. Oh, yeah. And then the bank had rang my husband about a gambling transaction at work. I remember I was at home and he rang me to ask me about it. And as soon as I got that phone call, I was like, right, this is it. It's all coming out. And pretty much a blur that night. But I know that I got in the car before I got home from work and drove to my mum's. I think I just said, I think the children they were old enough. Jessica was probably 16, 17, Harry 14. I just said, right, just have grandma, dad will be home soon. And I hid. I didn't answer my phone calls. I just couldn't face. I didn't know what I was going to do because I knew that it was going to come out. I still lied for that first week. How much? Not sure, maybe a few thousand, a few personal loans. And it wasn't until obviously he then started looking and delving. Like, not only was he shocked, I was shocked. When I said that I thought I'd taken 80, 90 out of the company accounts, everything in total, including personal, everything, I'd done £435,000 in 18 months. That I did not have. £500,000. To understand why my husband was very angry. That was our mortgage paid off. I got divorce papers in 8 weeks.
Oh, that's that. Okay. We just took a little break at this point, and then whilst we were chatting on the break, Pauline came out with this little gem I think you need to hear.
It's been very therapeutic writing all these notes tonight. Because when it got to the last one of what do you want to get out of this could have been stopped if I'd had the courage to tell somebody, before I started stealing the money. If I could have just told somebody without being so scared, oh, look, everything that followed could have stopped. So if one person listens to this and it gives them the courage to do that and not ruin their life.
I hope those amazing words of advice resonate with you. Now back to the conversation.
Yeah, so I got divorce papers within 8 weeks. Possibly partly my fault because I still wasn't ready to have a conversation about it. I moved into my mum's. I left the children with my husband, Roy. He'd done nothing wrong. Why would I remove them from this lovely family home and drag them with me? Which was heartbreaking. Obviously, I lost my job because I worked for him. I woke up one morning at my mum's and thought the car had been stolen. He'd actually come and taken it back. It was a company car. He cut my phone off. I was on 24-hour watch from my sisters because I was suicidal at that point. I remember them dragging me to the doctors. Sage needs help. They were useless. The doctor put me in a room and told me to ring the crisis line. The crisis line asked if I had some support. I said, yeah. And they basically said, right, if you need us again, ring back. Sent me home. I then went to live with a friend. Nobody wants to live with a mother. For about 8 weeks until I managed to rent somewhere. I couldn't rent anywhere because I had no credit. I had to get my sisters to guarantor. My husband is very good. Even though he was angry with me, we've always co-parented exceptionally well. He never stopped me seeing the children. If he had, I would have taken them with me, obviously. But that's a big bit of guilt because I think, do the kids think that I just left them? That wasn't the case. I'm not going to drag the kids away from the dad when he can financially support them and I can't. And he dropped them off to see me every day. I slowly started to rebuild some sort of life. I got a job. About 9-10 months down the line, it must have been when my husband and the accountant had to submit the company accounts and explain what had happened. I got a letter through the post saying that I was wanted for interview at the police station for that fraud. At this point, I'd spent 9-10 months rebuilding, getting back into work, getting a house. At the same time, I'm not saying this because I was very good at my job and I did it very well. It was something that I'd done. I worked in insurance and I'd done it previously before I worked for the family business. I think I was only there 3 months and I'd already got promoted. And I got 2 people in suits came in while I was sat at my desk and marched me into a private room and said that they'd had an anonymous phone call that I had a gambling addiction and there was a that fraud charge hanging over me and could I clear my desk and I was suspended. They did tell me that they had been monitoring my phone calls and my computer activity for the last couple of months and they know that I'd done absolutely nothing wrong at work. And I had to wait and go through all the HR stuff where I admitted that I had a gambling addiction. And they said that I was high risk for money laundering. And in that meeting, there must have been about 7 people there. Somebody obviously there was one particular guy who had obviously been or had close friends or family with either a gambling or an alcohol addiction, because I lied and said that I'd been going to GA and blah, 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 which I hadn't. And he was firing questions at me about the Orange Book and this, that, and the other. And he was like, you're not having any help, are you? But I ended up getting dismissed. My argument was I never lied on any application. They didn't ask me, did I have a gambling addiction or... And at the time, I had no criminal convictions hanging over me when I applied for the job. They managed to dismiss me on the fact that I did not disclose that I was taking antidepressants. That was on my dismissal forms.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So I was hit again after just trying to slowly get my life back. I'd lost my job, which at the time I'd just been hit with the charged with the VAT fraud, which, to be fair, I was probably better off not working because I needed legal aid. I couldn't afford a solicitor. And if I wasn't working, I could get legal aid. My husband didn't want this to happen. He was very supportive. He was like, it's out of my control. It's HMRC that are prosecuting, not me. My solicitor, when I went to the police station, I wanted to just be honest and tell my story. But obviously the solicitor's like, no, comment. Just no comment, everything. Which I did. And the process went on for a year. It was £40,000 worth of that fraud. I was consistently told that I would get a suspended sentence. You have never been in trouble with the police. You've got 3 children. You've contributed to society. You're no danger to society. You will continue to contribute to society. The judge, on the first time I went to court, and I told the whole truth, came back and said, you should not just be here for that fraud. You should be here for the theft of £300,000 from the company. The fact that your husband does not want to prosecute doesn't take away from the fact that you stole that money. I would like the CPS to go away and investigate that and come back again. Now, for the VAT fraud charge, I think the maximum sentence was 2 years. But for theft of that amount, the sentencing could have been up to 7 years. I don't know what this judge's problem was, but luckily the CPS couldn't get the crap together, and it got adjourned 3 times, because every time they came back, the CPS still hadn't managed to get their evidence together to charge me with the theft from the company. I don't know if that is part of the reason why the judge decided to sentence me as he did, because he thought I should have been charged with theft as well as the VAT fraud. At the time this all happened, I thought I deserved everything, and I wanted some sort of punishment. But looking back on it now, they're just so uneducated around gambling addiction, it is ridiculous. I remember his exact words to me were, you have never been in this court before. I am 100% certain I will never see you in this court again. You were motivated by greed. Now, nobody ever looked at my bank account. If I was motivated by greed, where is my fancy car? Where is my holiday home? Where is all these luxuries that I've got from my greed? It is pretty obvious that it was an addiction, not greed. And he said, you have stolen from the Crown's purse, and I sentence you to 20 months custodial sentence, which I was not prepared for. It seems really wrong. And I know the judicial system in this country is messed up anyway. But when you've got people that are a danger to society, and have never contributed to society, have no children, getting silly sentences for much, much worse crimes. It's ridiculous. Now, if I was sent to prison to be rehabilitated, fair enough. If they were going to give me an intensive course and educate me on gambling, or even give me an order to go to a rehab, my prison sentence said nothing, absolutely nothing. I was given, my gambling wasn't even mentioned the whole time I was in prison. On my release from prison with probation, it wasn't mentioned once. Not once did my probation officer say to me on release, "Are you going to GA? Are you aware of this charity? Have you contacted them?" They just wanted to know that I get the caseloads are heavy, and they've got a lot of people that are obviously a more dangerous to society that they need to look after. But they just wanted to know that from their perspective, I was doing all right. Do you know what I mean? I had a house, I had a job, and I wasn't going to cause anybody any trouble. Off you go. I got sent to a Cat A prison on sentencing for somebody that doesn't walk that path of life, that doesn't mix with criminals. I was in the same prison as Rose West. It's just bizarre. So I was terrified. I refused to come out myself for the first 6 weeks. They were like, "You're going to have to come out at some point." I was like, "I'm not. I'm too scared. I don't know how to handle myself." Do you know, in these situations, I daren't look at anybody. I daren't. I get on with most people, and I can adapt to most situations. You know, you can put me in a room full of posh people, and you can put me in the diviest pub, and I can manage to get on with most people. But even, yeah, I was absolutely terrified because I thought, yeah, I just need to look at somebody the wrong way, you know, or I was like, I don't deserve to be here. Maybe I did. I don't know. But that day that I got sent to prison, I was very open with all the children as the court case was going on. And Jessica and Harry were teenagers. They'd left school. Alfie was still only 9 or 10. And he knew I was in court that day. And I could go pick him up because I told him the same. I'll probably get a suspended sentence. I'll be home. And I remember my husband and my eldest daughter having to go pick him up. And they said that he literally walked out of the school doors, burst into tears because I wasn't there. This is all my own doing. This is what gambling led to. Whilst I was in prison, COVID hit. I think I did 7-8 weeks in the Cat A prison. I kept getting told I'd be moved to open, but it's just waiting for the spaces. I eventually got moved to open prison, and then COVID hit. So I got no benefits of open prison because we were all in single rooms, locked up 24 hours a day, more or less. In open prison, the activities on the weekend were bingo.
No. Oh, the irony.
You couldn't write it. You couldn't write it. But yeah, released from prison, I honestly thought, I have learned my lesson. That is it. Everything's out in the open now. Nothing to hide from anybody. Don't need to gamble. A lot of trauma to deal with then, once you're released. It was in the newspaper, and I had to come back and live in a small village where I live. A lot of shame and guilt around that. If I didn't have a reason to gamble before and I wasn't sure why I was gambling, I certainly did now, especially without receiving any help for my addiction.
I just want to go back to that. While you were in prison, you said that zero support was offered around the gambling addiction, nothing personal to you.
No. So they come round and they do the
A game of bingo.
yeah.
A game
So
of
they come
bingo was
round
the
it.
only thing
They
offered to
come
you.
round and they do these checklists. If you any history of mental health, suicidal, self harming, drugs, alcohol, lots of other things that you can think of to mention. Not once on any of them check sheets were gambling on there. So I'm guessing these check sheet highlight, right, they need referring to such and such service or they need referring to whatever. Gambling wasn't mentioned on any of them.
It's just not
It,
taken as serious as drugs and alcohol because it's not something you put in your body sort of thing. It's a
the,
emotional type of addiction.
yeah, and it's the same with the courts. It's not seen as drug addicts and alcoholics get the mitigating circumstances because it is seen as a medical addiction. And gambling still isn't. It
Yeah,
is.
it's not a
Again,
substance.
again,
It's not something you
again,
put in your body.
it's getting there now. There is a lot of work being done around the judicial system, um, trying to get that in there. But yeah, I felt let down a lot by prison service, probation. Yeah. So after I came out of prison, 8 months had passed. Um, Difficult to deal with, hard to get a job, especially when my background is insurance and finance. They're gonna every big corporate company is gonna run what do you call it? Criminal check. And I've been prosecuted for fraud. Nobody's gonna touch me in a corporate company. I was very lucky that one of my first employers when I was 17, 18, that I worked for a while, who did know my story, approached me and offered me a job. I thought it was all behind me, but very lonely, living on your own, trying to still deal and not dealing with anything that had gone on or processed anything properly. The gambling started about 8 months, probably after my release. Just that, fed up with my life. Why am I sat in this grotty 2-bed flat? Do when my husband's down the road in our 480 grand house, with 4 kids and no financial worries.
You
Also,
needed that escape more than ever.
yeah. Also, when we got divorced, I said it was only 8 weeks down the line. I was in no position to make any sensible decisions at that point. And I literally signed, I was full of remorse and guilt, everything. Yeah. Take the business, take the kids, take the house. And I just signed it all away. I don't deserve any of it. You have it all. There was probably a bit of resentment that we built that up together, over 20 years. And I think there's part of me that thought in doing that, he would eventually come round. I don't know. I wasn't expecting hand up, but I thought, I don't know. I just thought that by doing the right thing, they wouldn't see me destitute. Which you wouldn't see me destitute, but I struggled. I was struggling financially. but that's a consequence of my actions. And having to deal with that, knowing that I had it all and I lost it all, was very difficult when I came out of prison. So I remember the first time I was struggling to pay a bill, and I was like, right, I've got 20 quid in bank. I think I probably needed 80 to cover council tax or something. So, and it started, and I think it was within that first month, I gambled everything. Rent money, and every last penny that was in the bank. I think I managed to survive that first month by, I can't remember, I probably borrowed off somebody or beans and toast or whatever. Next month, because I'd missed all the bills the previous month, done exactly the same again. And that's when it hit me. I was like, everything I've been through, if everybody knows that I had a gambling addiction now, it was out in the open. I've been to prison. I've lost everything. Why the hell am I still gambling? Why has this still got this hold over me? And that's when I realised that it'd never been addressed. Over the last 3-4 years, after everything that I've been, not once has it been addressed. Why am I gambling? And I sat on the computer and I Googled, I need gambling help. Where can I get help? And a few things came up. I think that first night, Gamcare came up. And I think I remember calling them and having a conversation with somebody there. And also, I knew that I wasn't strong enough just for a conversation. I knew that if I'd been through everything that I've been through, just somebody telling me, I'm an educated person, just somebody telling me, you know, oh, you need to do that, it wasn't going to work. I needed serious intervention. And I came across a charity called Gordon Moody that said that they did gambling rehabilitation that was free of charge. And I remember reading through it all, what they offered. And one of the things they offered was it was like a 3-day, you go for 3 days. I think you stay for 3 days. They do a rehabilitation thing. You go home and they carry on outreach work with you for 4 weeks. And then you go back again for another 3 days. And I was like, right, that's probably what I need. I can manage that. And I remember making the phone call, them doing an initial assessment with me. And then somebody ring me back saying, I know that's what you applied for, but that's not what you need. We offer a 6-week in-house. And I remember just crying because I knew that's what I needed. But I was like, I can't disappear for 6 weeks without telling people. And then I'm like, after everything I've been through, everybody's going to think, how flipping stupid are you? To have been put through all that and you're still gambling. And I'm still carried that for about 2 weeks because I knew I needed it. But I was still so scared to have that conversation with people that I'd gambled again. And this makes me smile because I told my sister, my boss first, who said, yeah, take the 6 weeks off, your job's. And then I told my ex-husband, I was like, I'm going to have to tell the children. He went, I knew something was wrong. He went, I knew. He went, you can't have that sort of addiction and then just expect to be cured and you never go back to it. I was waiting for it. I was like, right, I just need to know that if I'm gone for 6 weeks, you're here. Of course I am. And then I spoke to the eldest daughter and I was like, I need to speak to you about something pretty serious. Can we have and I could see the worry on her face. And I told her and she went, for God's sake, mother, that's great news. And she was like, I thought you were going to tell me that you had a terminal illness. She went, that is brilliant. She went, that you've actually, gone and got that. I wasn't expecting it. I was really expecting them to be disappointed. Like they were when they first found out. But I think after they found out about the guy, no, they probably educated themselves a bit and know that it's not just going to stop, especially when you've had a pretty crap, couple of years. Yeah, I was scared to go into the rehab, so I wasn't sure what to expect. It was a ladies only rehab. It was 6 weeks. No visitors, not allowed out.
Just before you go into the rehab point, I just want to say how amazing is it when you don't know how people are going to react. Like, I'm going to go back to that fork in the road that you've come to there, where you've had the realization that you need to do something about this addiction. Unprocessed is just going to stay there. I need to do some work about it. And you've gone this way and started doing research and found the good and moody and opened up to people. And that fear of judgment is so hard to overcome. And then you get the reaction that you got, because like that fork in the road could have went 2 ways, and it's so hard to think about. It could have went the other way, and you could have spiraled again. But you've gone this way, and just the overwhelming love and support that you get from everybody. How amazing is that feeling?
Exactly. And I've had a lot of therapy since then as well, where a lot of the reason that you don't tell people that is because you've already got this preconception of how people are going to respond. And 90% of the time, it isn't. And that's just how you're thinking about yourself at the time. And what I was told quite often is you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And if somebody come to you with that problem, how would you react? Would you react how you're thinking people are going to react and say, oh, you're a waste of space, or would you offer them help if it's some, and it is. I think you just worry so much everybody's going to have a negative. And I can't stress enough that some cases it could be initially, but I think the majority of cases people are a lot more understanding than what we think they are going to be. Just the fact that we're open about it and we're being honest. Just,
Yeah, you're showing
it
you want to do the right thing.
definitely. And that's my whole point again. If I'd have taken that step when I'd first got the first few personal loans and I was worried about the postman coming to the door, if I wasn't so scared to have that conversation because I was worried about what people's perceptions would have been or what the comeback would have been, and I'd have had the strength to have done that then, everything that followed could have stopped. Just by being honest and having the courage to speak out, all of that could have stopped.
There's always I wish I had stopped sooner. I wish I had done it sooner, isn't it? I try to frame it as, at least for me personally, I stopped when I stopped, because I could have done so much more damage, and it could have been damage that was irreparable. So as hard as it is to accept the damage that I've done, I can go to sleep comfortably at night knowing I didn't do any further damage. I stopped when I stopped, sort of thing.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love what you say as well about put yourself in the other person's shoes. We always talk to ourselves so much worse than how we talk to other people. Like if a friend, you spoke about if a friend come to you with the same problem, you'd speak to them so much more support. You'd be so much more supportive and loving and caring towards them than how you think people would be towards yourself. Like you say, it's how you think about yourself type of thing. You always treat yourself worse than you treat others.
Yeah.
Right. So you've gone into the rehab centre.
How do I explain this to somebody that might be thinking of going? There's something in being with how many women? 7 women who totally get it. There's nothing that you can say to this group of women that will shock them that they haven't done. And the comfort in that, in being able to. I remember some nights I sat there telling stories and we're like, yeah, I've done that before, I've done that. And it's just like, nobody else would get it. And it's being able to express yourself and say things that other people might think that is totally unhinged or, they can't comprehend. But just being able to say it and get it off your chest and know that you're not the only one
Yeah.
is really helpful. I can't believe that I've been through prison and not been educated on gambling addiction. It just totally changed my perception of everything. It's really hard to explain. I just couldn't recommend it enough because the amount of tools that you're given, the amount of education on so many different things surrounding the addiction, one-to-one therapy. Everybody's journey is different, but it isn't until you go into therapy that you realise that things that happen when you're young, not blaming it on them, but they form your personality and they form the way that you deal with things and your emotions. And thinking about it in that way through a lot of therapy makes me think, right, maybe that shitty time, even though I tell myself that didn't affect me. Do you know what I mean? I'm stronger than that. It did affect me in a way because it makes me the way I deal with emotions now. Right, I'm strong, or I think I'm strong, but that's because I don't talk about stuff. And I've learned just to bury everything, which is probably what led to my gambling because I don't talk about stuff,
You just bury it deep down. You don't express it, and then it needs an
Yeah,
avenue to come out, and gambling was the way to get it off. The education that you receive from that, it's half the battle, isn't it? Understanding the addiction and being educated on the addiction, and then being able to relate that back to, like you keep saying, things that happened in your childhood. I then understand why I react like this to certain situations because of this, how I grew up this way, or how this used to happen.
yeah,
Yeah, now
yeah.
you're
And
making
I come
perfect
away
sense.
from Golden Moody with an A4 folder like that. And I mean, it's full of stuff. And quite often I'll go back and I'll flick through it. But yeah, they saved me. They saved me. But you've been given the tools then to deal with that. And after leaving Gordon Moody, they signposted me to so many different things. And I think I signed up to all of them. I know people have left and not done anything, thought that was enough. But I think I signed up to every single charity, every organisation that was recommended to me. And all of them are great. I can't recommend everybody that's been through a gambling addiction just wants to help other people. And you don't think there's any support out there until you start receiving some. And you'll be amazed how much support is actually out there. There is loads if you know where to look for it, or if you're actively seeking it.
It's a really good, really positive message for the viewers that the support is out there. You've just got to find it. We've bumped into each other on a couple of Zoom Gamblers Anonymouses. How does GA help you stay committed on your recovery? What does it give you each and every week?
It's like my medicine. I feel like I'm being accountable by attending a weekly meeting. I know it is one day at a time, and this can creep back up on me anytime. All I get from a bit like when I first went to God, people that totally get you. I use my GA like a therapy session every week. There's not many people that you can talk to about anything without being judged, either family or friends. And I can go onto a meeting and just say the most random stuff or things that are really bothering me that I'm worrying that maybe friends or family might judge me for. And just having that safe space where I can say, right, this has happened this week and this could possibly be a trigger. So I need to tell somebody because I probably won't tell anybody else outside of that group, and just having that space to be able to do that helps on a weekly basis, to be able just to share what's happened in that week. And sometimes before you even go to a meeting, you don't think that anything's worrying you or bothering you until you actually get there. And then you're like, oh, actually. And it makes you realise, it makes you very aware of what's going on, so that you can get a handle on things before you use gambling as an escape.
Famous line in Gamblers Anonymous is, I haven't got much to say this week, this'll be short, and then you end up speaking for 10 or 15 minutes. You realise once you start talking about what's happened, you realise everything that's been bothering you for that week. It's a therapy.
There is. There's been a few times where I've not even wanted to go to a meeting, because I've been depressed, or I think I really can't be bothered this week. And then I've gone and thought, right, I'm just going to go and listen just to show my face. And then halfway through the meeting, I'm thinking, why am I feeling like this when everybody else is talking? And before the meeting's finished, even that's made me address why I didn't want to go to the meeting in the first place. So, yeah, DA isn't for everybody, but I think that's because I've not found the right meeting personally. But
Yep, 100% agree. Yeah. We're agreeing on both saying a yes for anyone thinking about rehab. Go for it. Gamblers Anonymous, shop around, find the right meeting for you. There's a website called gamblersinrecovery.com. It shows every Zoom meeting in the world that's happening right now. Shop around and find the meeting with the right people for you. I completely agree with you on that. Pauline,
yeah.
this conversation today has been so eye-opening and so you've been so open and honest and shared so much of us here today. What are you hoping that people are gonna take from listening to your story today?
If you think you are struggling with a gambling addiction, it's to please just open up and tell somebody before it gets out of control even more than it already is. Like I said, if I'd had that first conversation when I was only 10, 15 grand in debt, I would not have been through all the horrible stuff that I've been through if I've just had that courage, just have that one conversation. And there is loads of help out there and people that get it. You're not alone. There's a massive community out there of people that can support you. So yeah, that'd be my main message. And can I just give a shout out to a few other charities that I know that'll help?
Of course you can. Yeah, we'll mention them in the description below as well.
Yeah, Epic Restart, fantastic for people in recovery. They try not to focus on the recovery itself. It's more to do with focusing on life after recovery. It's a community to get people, together and out there and doing fun stuff rather than just basing life on recovery. Bet No More, another brilliant one. New Beginnings, do a weekly group. Anybody going through the judicial system, because when crimes are may have committed, GamLearn have a specific department that I really wish I'd known about, who can help you with that process. They've even got people that will go along to court with you and speak on your behalf about what gambling addiction actually is. And then just the obvious ones, obviously, GamCare and GA. But yeah, I think they were the main ones I wanted to give a shout out to. Gordon Moody, obviously. They saved my life.
The support out there, people. Like I've just said, we'll link all of those things in the description below, what Pauline's just mentioned there. But a great positive way to finish this. Pauline, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.